It started with a whisper, a low-frequency hum that rippled through the galaxy, faint but undeniable. At first, no one took it seriously. The universe was full of strange occurrences, phenomena that could be explained away as anomalies, stars flickering in unusual patterns, bursts of radiation from distant quasars, the occasional interstellar message bouncing off deep space objects. But this was different. This was something purposeful. The signal was like nothing any race in the galaxy had ever encountered. It was not a random noise or an accident of space. It was a deliberate broadcast, directed outward, precisely timed, and encoded in a language no one could immediately decipher. But there was one thing that was universally understood. The source was Earth. Humanity's homeworld had long been considered an anomaly in the grand scale of galactic affairs. For centuries, humans had been a fledgling species, their home on the fringes of the galaxy. Despite their rapid technological advancements, they were still largely viewed as a young and unthreatening species. Their wars, their politics, their constant struggle for dominance. It had all painted a picture of a species still grappling with its place in the universe. The idea that they could somehow pose a threat was laughable to most. But then came the signal. It wasn't just a broadcast, it was a declaration. The message, transmitted in bursts of electrical pulses that sent waves of data across the galaxy, was simple but chilling in its implications. It contained a single phrase, one that would reverberate across every corner of the cosmos. Earth is silent. And silence. At first, no one knew what it meant. The Council of Races, an ancient body of galactic representatives, initially dismissed it as an error in the transmission. Some theorized that it was just a glitch, a quirk in the communication systems. Surely the humans hadn't developed anything capable of sending such a message deliberately. Earth's technology, though impressive by some standards, was still seen as crude by the ancient races that populated the galaxy. However, as the days passed, something strange began to happen. The signal stopped, but the silence continued. Ships passing near Earth's solar system began to report a disturbing discovery. There were no communications emanating from the planet. No transmissions, no signals, nothing. Earth was an absolute void in the galaxy's network. It wasn't just that the signal had ceased, it was as if the very fabric of communication had been severed. Cold, unyielding silence enveloped the planet. This silence wasn't the result of a cosmic accident or a technological malfunction. It was as though Earth itself had ceased to exist in the flow of interstellar information. This wasn't just the humans' own isolation. This was something far more deliberate and terrifying. The galactic races began to take notice. The Freudian overseers, whose ability to manipulate time had made them one of the most respected races, were the first to speak up. "It cannot be," they said. "The humans do not possess the power to erase themselves from existence. What we are witnessing is something far beyond their abilities." There was a growing unease as the realization spread. Earth wasn't just missing, it had vanished from the galaxy's collective awareness. And the longer it remained silent, the more questions began to form. Had the humans done this intentionally? Had they found a way to control their very existence? And if so, what did that mean for the galaxy? It was only the beginning, but already the tremors of fear were felt across the stars. The galaxy had underestimated Earth, and now, no one knew what to do next. As the weeks passed, the absence of Earth became an undeniable truth that no one could ignore. The silence that had initially been dismissed as a glitch in the galactic communication network had grown into something far more profound. The humans, once considered a restless, war-torn species, had managed to do something no one believed possible. They had rendered themselves unreachable, beyond the grasp of the galaxy's most advanced technologies. Strange unease gripped the galaxy as a whole. Ships that had once routinely passed by Earth, delivering trade goods and diplomatic messages, now returned with nothing but empty reports. They could no longer get a reading from the planet. No signals, no responses. The human presence, so familiar to the rest of the universe, had simply disappeared from the cosmic map. Earth had become a void, a dead spot in the vastness of space. On the fringes of the galaxy, a small but powerful alliance of races began to meet in secret. The Zelrath Collective, renowned for their vast libraries and scholarship, was among the first to speak of the growing fear. "The silence is unnatural," said Ishalar, a member of their council. "The humans were an unassuming species, yes, but their potential, what they were capable of, was a factor we could not disregard. We may have underestimated them." The score, a race of energy beings who existed in a constant state of flux, flickered nervously as they processed the implications. "It is not just their absence that concerns me," said Karaktith, a senior score representative. "It is what follows it. If Earth has intentionally erased itself from the galactic network, it could mean one of two things. They have achieved something beyond even our understanding. Or they have invited something far worse than we imagined," interrupted Vstrol, a member of the Witteriths, a species known for their cryptic and foreboding nature. Their thoughts were often as veiled as their physical forms, but this time, the fear in Vstrol's voice was palpable. "We have no way of knowing what happened to them. The humans, they were unpredictable, volatile. Who is to say they haven't summoned something from the deep unknown, something that even they cannot control?" The fear that had begun to simmer in hushed whispers now began to escalate, and the galaxy's most powerful races, once content to let humanity remain a fledgling species, began to reconsider their stance. What if Earth had done something that no one could comprehend? What if the humans had tapped into an ancient force, something beyond their understanding, or even their ability to contain? The Council of the Great Races, the highest body of interstellar governance, convened an emergency session to address the situation. Representatives from all corners of the galaxy arrived to discuss the implications of Earth's silence. The vast and powerful Galaran race, whose knowledge of science and engineering was unrivaled, had long viewed humans as little more than an amusing distraction. But now, they could not deny that something had changed. "There is no denying the data," Clith, a senior Galaran scientist, spoke gravely as he presented the findings. "Every scan, every attempt to contact Earth has yielded nothing. The planet is no longer part of the Galactic Information Network. It is as if it has simply ceased to exist in any meaningful way." "What does that mean for us?" asked Frill, a member of the Galaran military. "What if this silence is not just an act of isolation, but something far more dangerous? If the humans have found a way to erase themselves from our collective existence, what is to stop them from doing the same to us?" The question hung heavy in the air. The realization was creeping across the galaxy. Whatever Earth had done, they had done it on their own terms, and no one knew how or why. The fear began to take root in the hearts of the most powerful races in the galaxy. And then, as the sessions continued, it became clear that this was not just a matter of curiosity or concern. It was a question of survival. The galaxy was trembling, unsure whether Earth's silence was the herald of a new era or the first sign of a threat far greater than anyone had ever imagined. As the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the growing uncertainty surrounding Earth's sudden disappearance began to spread like wildfire across the galaxy. The initial speculation that the humans had merely experienced some sort of cosmic accident or failure in their communication systems quickly gave way to something darker. The silence persisted. No response, no explanation, no sign of life. The human homeworld had become a ghost planet. its very existence severed from the rest of the galaxy. And with that severance, fear began to take root in places where it had never been before. Across the galaxy, diplomats and scientists scrambled to piece together what had happened. The major races began to send ships to Earth's last known location, hoping to find some clue as to the fate of the humans. Some hoped to discover that the humans had merely withdrawn, retreating into isolation for reasons of their own. Others feared that Earth's silence was a prelude to something far worse, something they could not yet comprehend. The Chitauri, an insectoid species known for their calculating and paranoid nature, were the first to speak openly of their concerns. "We have underestimated the humans for far too long," said Exoth, a high-ranking Chitauri strategist. "Their technological growth was rapid, yes, but we saw them as little more than children playing at power. Now they have done something we cannot explain, something that suggests they may be far more dangerous than we ever imagined." The Zax, a race of reptilian warriors who had long clashed with humanity in brutal, sometimes brutal, skirmishes, were not as fearful, but they were still unsettled. "I do not believe the humans have attacked," said Tazarek, the Zax commander. "If they had wanted to strike, they would have done so already. But this silence, it is more than a mystery. It is a challenge, a test of what we know and what we control." Among the peaceful races, a more cautious perspective began to take hold. The Zelrath Collective, long known for their deep, contemplative studies of the cosmos, were the first to suggest that the silence might not be an act of aggression. "Perhaps the humans have found something," said Ishalar, the head scholar of the Zelrath Council, "a force or a power that transcends their current understanding. Maybe they have ascended beyond their former selves, perhaps to a state we can neither perceive nor comprehend." But even as voices of reason tried to temper the growing fear, the galaxy's most powerful races, those who had long stood at the top of the galactic hierarchy, began to panic. They were terrified of what the silence could mean. What if the humans had learned something they had not? The very idea that humanity could become a force beyond the control of the established powers was a terrifying thought. Some of the oldest and most advanced races began to speculate that Earth's silence could be the first sign of a new phase in cosmic evolution, something the galaxy had never witnessed before. Could it be that the humans had somehow unlocked the key to something that even the Freudian overseers, beings who could bend time itself, did not understand? Meanwhile, in the most remote corners of the galaxy, the growing paranoia began to swell. Leaders met in secret, quietly forming alliances, organizing defense strategies, and even calling for military mobilizations. Every species that had once looked at humanity as a curiosity or a nuisance now saw them as an unknown threat. The silence had created a void, and in that void speculation filled the gaps, speculation that soon turned to fear. As ships gathered at the edges of the solar system, preparing for their journey to Earth's location, it was clear that the galaxy was no longer the same. No longer would the humans be dismissed as a young species struggling to find its place. The message was clear: humanity had disappeared. But it hadn't gone away. And now, the question that hung in the air was not whether the galaxy would ever hear from Earth again, but what would happen when it did. The silence had become a shadow, and that shadow was stretching far and wide, casting its darkness over the entire galaxy. The Tremors were just beginning, and no one was prepared for what might come next. The Galactic Council, the governing body that represented the most powerful and influential races across the galaxy, convened in an emergency session. The Grand Hall, located on the moon of Raintar, a neutral zone at the heart of the galaxy, was filled with the representatives of the oldest and most formidable species in the known universe. For millennia, these races had coexisted in a delicate balance, each contributing their knowledge and power to maintain peace and stability. But the silence from Earth had disrupted that equilibrium, and now the council was tasked with determining what, if anything, could be done. The tension in the room was palpable. Leaders from all corners of the galaxy exchanged uneasy glances, their minds racing with questions and fears they hadn't dared to voice. For the first time in a long while, the once confident representatives of the galaxy's dominant species found themselves uncertain. The humans, previously dismissed as a volatile and immature race, had managed to do something that no one could explain, and the humans had managed to do something that no one could explain. They had made themselves vanish, and in doing so, had created a void that threatened to consume everything the galaxy had built. Calith, the senior representative from the Galaran race, stood at the podium, his voice echoing through the massive hall. "We must find out what has happened," he said, his tone grave. "There is no longer any doubt. The humans have done something that defies all known laws of science and communication. They have removed themselves from the galactic network as though they never existed." The room fell silent as the implications of Calith's words sank in. For centuries, the Galarans had been the foremost authority on advanced technology and space travel. Their understanding of the fabric of reality itself was unrivaled. But even they were at a loss. The disappearance of Earth was not a cosmic accident or a mere failure of communication. It was an act of profound disruption. Tizark, the commander of the Zax military, spoke next, his reptilian eyes narrowing. "What if this is not simply an accident? What if the humans have achieved something they should not have? What if they have found a way to manipulate the fabric of the universe itself?" A murmur rippled through the council. The Zax, a warlike species with a long history of conflict, had often clashed with humanity. Their pride and arrogance had led them to underestimate humans in the past, but even they could not ignore the possibility that the humans had unlocked a power far beyond their capabilities. "It is clear," said Ishalar of the Zelrath, his voice calm yet laced with concern, "that we are dealing with something far beyond our understanding. The humans are no longer just a species to be contained. They have become an enigma, one that may pose a threat to all of us. The question is, how do we respond?" The room fell into silence once more. The Weeriths, whose species had always maintained an air of cautious detachment, exchanged whispered words. The Freudian overseers, who had once observed the humans from a distance, now found themselves uneasy. "If the humans have transcended their previous limitations," said Yithrak, the Freudian leader, "we may have no way of knowing their true intentions. They may no longer be bound by the laws that govern us." "Are we to do nothing?" Karakti, the leader of the Score energy beings, asked sharply. "We cannot simply wait and hope that the humans will make their return. If they have ascended to a new state of being, we may be left with no defense against whatever they choose to do next." The debate raged on for hours, with no clear consensus emerging. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt had taken root in the hearts of even the most powerful races in the galaxy. No one had expected this. No one had anticipated that a species once thought to be so primitive and unpredictable could change the entire dynamic of galactic power. Finally, it was Calith who spoke again, his voice unwavering. "We must send a task force to Earth's last known location," he said. "We must understand what has happened to them. If the humans have become something beyond our reach, we need to know what that means for the future of the galaxy." The decision was made, though it was clear that it came from a place of desperation rather than confidence. A fleet of the most advanced ships, carrying the galaxy's most formidable military and scientific minds, would be dispatched to investigate. But as the representatives began to file out of the council chamber, an overwhelming sense of dread hung in the air. What had the humans done? And was there any way to stop it if they had unleashed something they could no longer control? The council had no answers, only questions, and the quiet certainty that the galaxy had already been irrevocably changed. The fleet arrived at Earth's last known coordinates under a veil of tension that was impossible to ignore. Ships from across the galaxy, each more advanced than the next, entered the system cautiously, scanning every inch of space with technologies honed for centuries. Every race had sent their finest ships and scientists, their best minds and military officers, each determined to uncover the truth of Earth's sudden disappearance. But as they approached, what they found was not a void, but something far more unsettling. At first glance, Earth was just as it had been described, a desolate, lifeless rock floating motionless in space. There was no sign of destruction, no evidence of catastrophe. The planet was intact, its oceans, once a vibrant blue, now a dull, lifeless gray. Its cities, which had once hummed with the activity of billions of people, were now eerily quiet. The great sprawling metropolises, once marvels of human engineering, lay abandoned, as though humanity had simply ceased to exist overnight. But as the fleet drew closer and their instruments scanned the planet's surface, the true nature of the situation began to reveal itself. The ship's advanced sensors, capable of detecting even the faintest traces of energy or matter, came back with alarming results. There were no signals. No electromagnetic radiation emanated from the planet. No residual energy from human activity remained. Earth was a silent, empty world, devoid of life, technology, or any trace of the civilization that had once thrived there. A few of the ships in the fleet attempted to make direct contact using the usual methods of communication, broadcasting a variety of signals, hoping for a response. But the silence persisted. They tried every frequency known to their species, each more advanced than the last, and still, the planet remained mute. It was as if Earth had been erased from existence itself, scrubbed from the very fabric of the galaxy's communication network. "This cannot be," said Calith, the Galaran scientist who had been leading the mission. His voice was shaky as he processed the data that filled his screen. "The energy signatures are all wrong. Earth it's as though it's not even here. It's not simply silent, it's absent." The crew of the lead ship, a sleek vessel designed for scientific exploration, fell into a heavy silence. No one had an answer. The humans who had once been so full of potential, so volatile, so unpredictable, had seemingly vanished without a trace. But that wasn't the worst part. As the fleet continued to observe, something even more unsettling became apparent. There was no evidence of anything happening. No signs of destruction, no remnants of an explosion, no massive energy surges. Earth had simply ceased to be. Yithruk, the Pherodian overseer, stood at the observation deck of his ship, staring out into the void where Earth once was. His race, capable of bending the very fabric of time, had witnessed the passage of eons, and yet this phenomenon was beyond their comprehension. "This is beyond any of us," he said quietly, his voice heavy with a rare vulnerability. "No technology in the galaxy could have caused this. This is something else." A profound silence settled across the entire fleet. No one spoke for a long time. It was clear that Earth had not been destroyed by natural forces, nor had it been consumed by some catastrophic event. There were no remnants of war or disaster, no trace of planetary upheaval. The planet was simply gone. But it wasn't gone in the way one might expect. It was as if Earth itself had stepped out of existence. And then, as the scientists worked tirelessly to piece together data from their scans, a chilling discovery was made. There was no sign that the planet had ever been part of the galactic network. It was as if the planet had been removed from the very fabric of reality, its existence erased from the universal memory. This was not a simple disappearance. This was something far more profound, something that suggested the humans had unlocked a power or knowledge that no one could comprehend. Whatever had happened, Earth had not been destroyed. It had been transcended. In the hours that followed, a sense of dread settled over the fleet. The galaxy had long operated under the assumption that it was the pinnacle of existence, that its oldest races had mastered all there was to know. But humanity, in its own unpredictable way, had demonstrated that there were forces in the universe far beyond even their reach. What the humans had done, whether by choice, chance, or something else, was something no one had seen coming, and the consequences of their silence were only just beginning to unfold. As the fleet prepared to leave Earth's orbit, the question that hung in the air was no longer what had happened to the humans, it was what would happen now. Earth had gone silent, but that silence had left a void in its wake, a void that was beginning to be felt across the entire galaxy. The return of the fleet to the galactic core was met with an atmosphere thick with anxiety. The truth they had uncovered about Earth's disappearance was more terrifying than any of them had anticipated. No one had expected this. A species once considered fragile had somehow transcended the boundaries of existence, and in doing so, they had left the galaxy trembling in their wake. Back in the Grand Council Hall, the atmosphere was one of palpable tension. The leaders of the galaxy's most powerful races had gathered once more, this time to discuss the implications of what had happened to Earth. There were no longer any questions about whether the humans had disappeared. It was undeniable now. Earth was gone, and what had replaced it was an absence so profound that it was as if the fabric of reality itself had been altered. But the real question now was, what would come next? "We are facing something unprecedented," said Clith, the Galaran scientist, his voice low and filled with dread. "We have scoured the solar system, studied every possible scan, and still, we cannot comprehend what has occurred. Earth's disappearance is not the result of war, not the result of some cosmic accident. It is something else entirely. The humans have—" He paused, searching for words. "They have erased themselves from existence." A murmur rippled through the assembly. It was a phrase no one had dared to utter before now. Erased themselves. It was a concept so alien, so impossible, that it had been dismissed as a mere hypothetical. Yet here they were, staring at the truth. Earth had vanished without a trace, and with it, the humans had seemingly unlocked a force that could transcend the very laws that governed the galaxy. Tazark, the Zax's commander, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "We are no longer dealing with the humans as we once knew them," he said, his tone cold but firm. "This is no longer about war or diplomacy. Earth's silence. This is a message. The humans have demonstrated an unimaginable power, and that power, well, it could be a threat to all of us. But a threat of what kind?" Ishalar, the Zelrath scholar, asked, his voice tinged with confusion. "We do not know their intentions. They may have ascended, but what if they have simply removed themselves from our affairs entirely? What if Earth's disappearance is an act of retreat? They were never a unified force to begin with. Perhaps they simply seek isolation." "I disagree," said Yithrak, the Frodian leader, his usually calm demeanor now replaced with unease. "We cannot afford to assume this is simply an act of seclusion. There is a dangerous potential in what the humans have done. We have no way of knowing if they have unlocked some ancient force. If Earth's silence is not voluntary, but instead the result of something far darker, we may all be in grave danger." A heavy silence fell over the council, and for the first time in centuries, the races of the galaxy, races that had long held the balance of power, found themselves on edge. For all their knowledge and technological superiority, they had no answer. The humans, in their silence, had changed everything. The old rules no longer applied. "What do we do?" Harak, the leader of the Scar, asked, his energy-based form fluctuating with visible agitation. "We cannot simply sit here and wait. If we do nothing, we risk being blindsided. If Earth is no longer part of the galaxy's fabric, then we have no way of predicting their next move. The room fell into a tense quiet as everyone grappled with the new reality they faced. For eons, the galaxy had been a place where power, knowledge, and influence were things that could be measured and understood. But the disappearance of Earth had shattered that illusion. If the humans had truly transcended, if they had found a way to alter the fabric of existence itself, what would stop them from doing the same to any other species, or even the entire galaxy? The question hung in the air, unspoken, but understood by all. Could the galaxy survive this new age, an age where the rules were no longer clear? The council members exchanged uneasy glances, and it became painfully evident that there was no easy answer. The humans had vanished, but in their absence, they had created a void that threatened to swallow everything in its path. One thing was certain: the galaxy was no longer the same. Something had changed, and the silence from Earth had become a harbinger of a new, unknown era. The only question now was whether the galaxy would be able to survive it. Months passed, but the silence remained. Earth's absence from the galactic network had become an undeniable truth, one that was slowly sinking into the collective consciousness of the galaxy. The major races, once confident in their place at the top of the cosmic hierarchy, now found themselves looking over their shoulders, wondering if they were next. No one knew what had happened to Earth, and no one dared make assumptions about what might come next. The galaxy had always prided itself on its ability to anticipate and control, but now it was no longer so certain of its future. The once feared and revered Galarans, whose mastery of science and technology had placed them at the forefront of galactic civilization, were now baffled. The idea that a species as young and volatile as humanity could achieve such a feat, something that defied all understanding of physics and communication, was beyond anything they could have predicted. The humans had, in their absence, demonstrated a power that had the potential to reshape the galaxy itself. Calith, the lead scientist who had first investigated Earth's disappearance, found himself consumed with an obsessive desire to understand. He spent sleepless nights analyzing the data, running simulations, and consulting with the galaxy's brightest minds. But every attempt to unravel the mystery only led to more questions. Where had the humans gone? How had they done it? And most chillingly, what would happen when they returned? It was clear that humanity had unlocked something, whether by design or by accident, that was beyond the reach of any race, even the most ancient. Meanwhile, in the far reaches of the galaxy, the Withriths, those enigmatic beings known for their cryptic observations, began to stir. For eons, they had remained on the edges of galactic affairs, preferring to observe rather than intervene. But Earth's disappearance had piqued their interest. Withrith, the most senior of the Withriths, had begun to gather their most gifted seers, those who could peer into the folds of time, searching for answers. What they found was unsettling. There were whispers of a cosmic shift, a fundamental alteration of the universal order. It was as if a doorway had been opened, one that no one fully understood, and the humans had been the first to step through it. The Wyriths did not know what was on the other side, but they could sense the tremors, ripples of change that spread outward like the aftershocks of a quake. In the heart of the galaxy, the Galactic Council continued to meet, though their once confident discussions had turned into tense, drawn-out deliberations. The idea of a unified response had fractured. While some still believed that Earth's silence was simply a retreat, a self-imposed exile, others feared it was the beginning of something much worse. The Zax, the Score, and the Freudian Overseers, races that had long held military supremacy, began to push for a more aggressive stance. They were afraid of what the humans had done. They feared that Earth had become a power that could no longer be controlled, that the galaxy's long-held stability was at risk. "What if we cannot just wait for them to return?" said Tazark, the Zax military commander, his voice harsh with fear. "What if they come back not as a people, but as a force? a force that can erase us as easily as they erase their own world. But others, like Ishaelar of the Zelrath, cautioned against such thinking. We do not know enough to act on fear. The humans may have ascended, yes, but we do not know their intentions. What if they have moved beyond the need for war or power? What if they have found something that allows them to see the universe in a way we cannot understand? The debates raged on, but beneath it all, a growing sense of dread spread like a shadow over the council chambers. Even the most advanced races in the galaxy had begun to question their place in the cosmos. No one had expected this. A species that had been nothing more than a thorn in the side of galactic politics had become a force that transcended all understanding. And then, just when it seemed that the silence from Earth would continue to stretch on indefinitely, something changed. A signal, faint but unmistakable, flickered to life in the deep reaches of space. It was not like any transmission that had come before. It wasn't a message in the traditional sense, but something far more complex, far more ancient. The signal was a pattern, a code, one that seemed to pulse with energy and purpose. For the first time in months, the galaxy held its breath. The humans had not just disappeared, they had evolved, transformed into something else entirely. And whatever they had become, they were sending a message. But the question was no longer what they wanted, it was what they had become. The galaxy would soon find out.